Hey everybody, it's Jason McClaren with the Leadership Loading Podcast. My guest today is Roy Cohen. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. It's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, so today we're recording this on 9/11, the 23rd anniversary. Yeah, today's 23rd anniversary of 9/11. Obviously, being a veteran myself and active duty on 9/11 holds a place in my heart, and obviously being a firefighter even holds a more stronger place in my heart. So, um, Roy reached out to me. We met online, as most people do nowadays, and Roy was actually in the towers on 9/11. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and then a little bit about what he's doing now. So, Roy, if you can just introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm Roy Cohen. I'm a career coach, also best-selling author of a career book called The Wall Street Professional Survival Guide. And I work with clients, broadly speaking, on career management, whether it's in about job search or managing their lives on the job, which is more commonly referred to as executive coaching.
All right. So we'll start with 9/11 and then we'll go into what you're doing now and how you're helping everybody. So yeah, you were a volunteer fire warden for your floor. So for those that are not familiar with that, usually in office buildings or high rises, each floor is designated a fire warden. That's somebody that kind of helps out during an emergency, and they, help the lay person that doesn't know, where to go, what to do, and kind of coaches them during the emergency. And I'll let Roy tell you a little bit about his background there and what happened on 9/11.
Well, I had volunteered as the fire warden for the floor. I was working for a global consulting firm and also with Goldman Sachs. And that morning, I was in the office rather early, meeting with a client, and all of a sudden I heard an explosion, and then I saw debris floating in the air. I was on the 23rd floor, and I knew something bad had happened because I'd been in the Trade Center in the 90s, mid 90s, when there had been an explosion in the garage. So I just hustled. And to be quite frank with you, we had a number of tenants on the floor, and it was my responsibility to make sure that they exited. And that was actually not so simple because uh, 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 we've been told repeatedly that the trade center was virtually indestructible. So many folks were reluctant to leave the floor, and it took a lot of urging. And as we were exiting, it was just, in terms of thinking about it now, it was quite frankly devastating. Firemen were running up the fire stairway, and we were exiting and heading down to the ground floor. So a tough day and just tragic and heartbreaking.
Definitely, I can only imagine that. I was actually active duty at the time, firefighter at Lackland Air Force Base, and just got off duty. I'd worked the night shift, got off at 7 a.m. Was going home to get some rest and saw, this was back when AOL was the only way to connect to the internet, and my little AOL news feed was showing everything, and so yeah, it's definitely a poignant experience for everyone involved. Um, so you said 9/11 was a turning point for you. So what happened? Obviously after 9/11, lots of post-traumatic things to deal with. So as you move forward, where you at now and what you're doing.
Well, at the time, I'd been working for a large consulting firm, and I had this dream of working for myself and creating a dynamic, very energetic business that was solely based on my ability to make something happen and to build that business into a meaningful platform for folks. And my interest was because I'd had my background was in Wall Street, working with Wall Street professionals. I was drawn to working with them as a career advisor, and that's precisely what I did. I resigned. Took about 2.5 years for me to wind down my office, and then hung a shingle out. And I work with primarily Wall Street people, but when you've been doing this for a while, uh, folks who feel satisfied with the work that you do together make referrals. So largely Wall Street professionals, but all sorts of other folks as well in just various industries. And I work with them, as I mentioned, on strategy around job search and making sure that if they are working and they want to continue working, that they're doing everything possible to stay vital and healthy and attractive in the marketplace and in their companies.
Right. And so your clients, are they already executives or they're just trying to get into an executive role?
Well, they're at every level. I joke with folks that the only clients I don't want to work with are those who whine and are not willing to at least meet me halfway in terms of taking responsibility for managing this process. I see it as being collaborative, um, uh, uh, but for clients who are not willing to do the heavy lifting, then that's not necessarily the right client for me.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
in terms of what we do together, for folks who are in job search, we work together to figure out what they want to do, why they want to do it, what they bring to that proposition, and how to execute in a way that will achieve success for them. How do we make sure that if they're out in the marketplace, they're achieving their goals? Um, Job search can be both lonely and frustrating. And it's not unusual to feel discouraged when you're in this process. So it's really, I find it to be that collaboration to be energizing, and it makes a difference for folks.
Definitely. And that's kind of why we were talking about before we started recording. We started Go Heroes because of that. There's a lot of organizations out there that help veterans with career transition, but there's not a lot for veterans and first responders. So we've kind of filled that gap there. And then obviously we help civilians to a point, um, you know, at a different, we have a different platform for that, but we do that and then
Yep.
partner with organizations and people like Roya that, can help them better than we can. Um, so with all this kind of led you to write your book, The Wall Street Professional Survival Guide. I like the title, obviously being former military. It sounds pretty cool. So can you tell us about a little bit
Thank you.
about your book?
Well, I realized that there were lots of folks on Wall Street who were quite talented, successful, smart, ambitious. But when they tripped and found themselves either in transition or dissatisfied with work, they didn't have simply the tools uh, uh, to deal with the experience. And many of them found themselves just with either great fear, and these are folks who have historically been very successful, but fear, immobilized, and just not really knowing uh, how to manage and navigate a dynamic job search, and that became my mission. And then I realized when I was working with folks, those who worked with me to successfully land, once they were on the job, there were lots of landmines at work, and it was equally important for me to help them make the most of their new opportunities, or for clients who reached out to me who are working and fearful. How do we make sure that that fear is mitigated? So it really emerged out of that, and I felt like I wanted to reach a much larger audience, and that was especially important for me. Wall Street is vast, and it's not just based in New York. It's in Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, and London. I have lots and lots of clients who are based in London and other European cities, and some in Asia. And the goal is really just to make sure that these concepts are accessible to folks. Fear doesn't have to exist if you understand how things work, and that is basically my mission to provide folks with that level of support. Some people, and the book did quite well. Some people derive that support from just from having read the book, and it's enough for them. But there are lots of others who need then to approach this process with a bespoke experience. Cookie cutter process doesn't necessarily work for everyone. There are basic principles that we follow when we conduct job search, or uh, 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 when we have developed greater understanding what we need to do to survive on the job. But sometimes it's helpful to bounce ideas off of somebody who's experienced in this area. And so some of my clients are have a need for lots and lots of work together, and others just really need to bounce some ideas off. And then there are folks who read the book and have sent me notes about how it changed the way they looked at this experience of either being in transition or managing their careers. So it was really very impactful for me. I also had been doing a lot of media work after I left after I established my practice. I was on the Today Show a number of times. I was on a number of other media outlets, CNN, Fox Business, and I was discovering that there were lots and lots of folks out there who were confused, and I just felt like this was an opportunity for me to expand my reach and provide these sorts of ideas and information and data to folks who may not necessarily have the resources to hire somebody like myself. So it was my mission really just to kind of spread the word, to evangelize around career.
I like that, and that's kind of like I said, what we do here at Go Heroes, helping the veterans and first responders, and back to your point about Wall Street being basically a global organization, and that's where we as veterans can fit in, and we're used to doing things globally, right? Working with different industries and different cultures, and so it's always useful when we have those skills. So
And
and you kind of leaned in. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I'm very familiar with military culture. My dad graduated from Kings Point, and he was actually, and that's Merchant Marine Academy. He was the very first class at Kings Point, and he was in the Navy for a number of years. In his last stint, he was the assistant commander of a naval warship. So there is a military profile. There's a sense of there's discipline and loyalty and a commitment to doing things the right way. And I just felt like, this would be a way for me to honor his legacy as well.
Definitely. And you kind of hinted at it earlier about fitness. So you're on the men's fitness advisory board, and I think that
Hmm.
obviously, once again, making this relevant for the audience, being military and first responders, we want to maintain our fitness. Um, I'll admit I'm not the biggest fitness guru. I keep my body slim, but I don't work out or have any kind of regimen. I just make sure I don't eat donuts every day. But
Hmm.
but I think that is important because if you're not maintaining your fitness, you will get tired and you will get burned out, and that
Hmm.
also as part of the podcast, being leaders, that fitness regimen and being aware of fitness, makes you a better leader, I think, because it just has that discipline and the feedback you need to, be a better leader.
Absolutely, I agree with you. My dad was an orphan as a kid, but he was also a great athlete, and that really that discipline was established early on, and that's what allowed him to achieve success in the military. And that was something I learned from him. I was on the track team in high school. I was on the track team at college, and I just believe that good health uh, uh, it produces uh, it 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 well let me back up a little bit. Uh, Good health allows us to gain focus, to be energized, and if there's any tension or fear or stress, it helps to reduce that. And also eating the right foods, having a proper diet, being healthy nutritionally is equally important because our bodies are basically machines, and you need to make sure that you fuel that machine so that so that it's protected and it operates at peak efficiency. And think about it, when folks are in job search, it's a very stressful process. We should have a heightened commitment to wanting to be as healthy as possible. And if we are committed to working hard and smart on the job, then it makes great sense for us to do everything possible to stay as healthy and fit as possible. When we're not healthy, that can be very distracting. And if we're not healthy and we're in job search, it can trip us up, and we can fall off the wagon. And that can every time that happens, it makes us less efficient because we've got to get back on the wagon. So I'm a big believer that fitness is critical to a healthy and happy life.
Definitely. All right, Roy, if you had, 1 minute, you're riding an elevator with somebody and they ask you for some career advice, what would it be?
Um, so I often find that when folks reach out to me, it's at a time of crisis, and that's not the time to figure out that you need career help. One way to avoid crisis is to proactively seek out somebody like myself, so that you establish that relationship early on, and it doesn't just happen when the bottom has fallen out. So that would be one piece of advice, and another is, you know when you find yourself in transition, whatever you were doing, make sure you know what you want to do next. Because if you're not clear on what your goal is, we end up wasting a lot of energy and time, which is very valuable in job search, and just barking up the wrong tree, and that is incredibly unproductive. And for military folks, and I want to emphasize this point. Um, Transition is actually not that difficult. A lot of companies seek out military experience because folks who've served in the military have uh, 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 they're loyal, they have good judgment, they've been tested in times of stress, and those are qualities that need to be introduced in companies in order for those companies be managed uh, uh, to be managed effectively and productively. So my thinking is that there are lots of ways um, that military veterans can really sort of convey that they bring those qualities to an organization. But most importantly, they need to know what they want to do next. And then it's very simple to craft the story and the resume based around um, the skills and qualifications that you acquired in the military.
Definitely. All right. So if anyone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Uh, my website, it's Roy Cohen. That's ROYCOHEN. Cohen, excuse me, Roy Cohen at careercoachny.com. So ROYCOACH at, excuse me, ROYCOHEN at careercoachny.com.
Good deal. We'll put the links in the show notes below.
That'd be great. And the book is called The Wall Street Professional Survival Guide. And thank you so much, Jason. It's really nice to meet you. And thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.